Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and today we're taking a look up in BC as we are taking a look at the Vancouver Canucks continuing our season preview series. So the Vancouver Canucks had a pretty quiet summer, to say the least. But I think this is the calm before the storm, because obviously the whole JT Miller thing is kind of hanging over their heads for next summer. And there's a couple of contracts with guys like, Bo Horvat, the captain, and there's a lot going on next year. So I'm not really as worried about what they did or didn't do this summer. You also have to remember there's a new staff in there. Patrick Allvin, and Jeremy Rutherford have come into Vancouver, into that staff, and they want more time to kind of see what they've got in front of them before making major decisions to the organization. So the acquisitions to the Vancouver Canucks this summer, it's a small list, but it's something worth mentioning. Curtis Lazar and Ilya Mikheyev. That's really it for the Canucks. And again, to kind of loosely put, I have Vasily Podkolzin on here because he's going to get more playing time next year. So the Vancouver Canucks, you look at Mikheyev, he's been in Toronto the last couple years. You wonder if he could sustain that success in Vancouver as secondary scoring. I think he can do that. And Curtis Lazar, he's had some mitigating success for teams in the bottom six, kind of being a depth scorer. They could put up 15 to 20 goals maybe per season. That's kind of what you're hoping for him next year in Vancouver. And obviously Podkolzin, you're expecting to see a little bit more ice time, hopefully in the top six next season. So with that being the case, the Vancouver Canucks, it was a tough season for them last year. Did not start off well at all. It led to the firing of their head coach, their former general manager, and just everything kind of imploded. And now we've got, Bruce Boudreau behind the bench. We've got a new management staff, a new GM. Everything has changed in Vancouver, but mostly the personnel on the ice still looks the same. And I think that's kind of what, the best way to put this. This is the calm before the storm. I think Vancouver is going to be very active this year at the trade deadline and next summer, because I think Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, they have the ability of time, because they have a lot of contracts that are up next summer. So they have time here in the beginning of this season, this fall, into this, the beginning of next year, to really decide what this team is. Is this the flash in the pan team we saw at the end of last season with Bruce Boudreau behind the bench, or is this a team that genuinely has some structural, shortcomings that they need a full rebuild for? And I think that's kind of what we're going to figure out throughout this season with the Canucks. So you look at their goals for and goals against last season. Their goals for was 18th best in the league, so below average, but right around that middle point, which I guess isn't great, but not bad. And then their goals against. And this is kind of frustrating because the Canucks were 8th in the National Hockey League last year for goals against. A lot of that on the back of their goaltending and their blue line, which is kind of funny enough, right? So they finished top 10 in defense, but couldn't sneak into the playoffs. And I think that's what's frustrating for the Canucks, is the lack of goal scoring. And I think that's a big reason they brought in Ilya Mikheyev to add some depth scoring. Same thing for Lazar. And that's kind of it for the Canucks. It's been a pretty quiet offseason because I think they want to see what they've got here before making any big moves. Now, there is the debate out there that there was a JT Miller trade to the Islanders on the table last at the draft, and the Islanders obviously went a different route. But that's something that, again, it really wouldn't have changed the direction of the Canucks at this point. That's more of a JT Miller situation, which is kind of a side point from this whole debate on the Canucks. I know some Canucks fans out there, you guys are upset with the lack of moves this summer, but I think with the new staff and just the way things are right now, you kind of have to keep status quo, because if you start investing big money into some free agents and stuff like that, well, now that's less money that you have for guys in the future, because in the next 3 years, you have some massive contracts to re-sign in Vancouver. So you don't want to put all your investments into guys that you don't really know where they're going to be. And, just to name a couple guys, by 2025, these are some contracts that are going to be due. Vasily Podkolzin, JT Miller, Bo Horvat, and Elias Pettersson. those are all pretty big name guys on this roster that have to be paid in the next couple of years. Not to mention you have guys like Niels Höglander next summer. Travis Dermott might see a little bit more money next year. And they're going to need a backup goaltender here in the next couple of years, depending on what happens with Spencer Martin. So, I think the Canucks right now, it's kind of just standing pat, which is their best move. But I just don't think it's as fun, right? There's not a lot to talk about with the Canucks. But I think they're going to run it back with what they did last year, see what happens, right? For the most part, I think the Canucks are a better team just by some of the younger guys getting more developed, right? Guys like Niels Höglander, Vasily Podkolzin, Quinn Hughes, as good of a player as he's been, he's still very young, right? He's still 22 years old, so he's going to continue to develop. Vasily Podkolzin, Elias Pettersson, who's still 23 years old, still very young. Brock Besser just got that extension. Hopefully we'll see some confidence in him. What is this Andrei Kuzmenko kid? Is this kid for real? And I know you guys will mention that I forgot him. Andrei Kuzmenko, you have to remember the Russian acquisition there. How good is he? Is he one of these guys that's... I'm trying to remember the guy that went to Nikita Gusev? Or is he more of one of the better players that came over from Russia, right? So we'll kind of see how that develops. Again, the Canucks adding more depth to the scoring group. And I think you clearly see with the goals for last season that was the thing they were most deficient in next year. We'll see if they could add to that. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the Vancouver Canucks? I do have them, in terms of playoff picture, I do have them making the playoffs next year. And a lot of that depends on what happens, I think, in Vegas and Anaheim. But I think that the Vancouver Canucks are better than those teams. So let me know what you guys think down below. What do you think of the Canucks? Are they a playoff team in 2023? Or do you think they miss again? I have them finishing 4th in the Pacific Division. But even that is still up for debate if that's a playoff spot. That's a wild card spot. And they might be in the running with a team like Winnipeg or Dallas at the end of the season. Unlike this season, are they going to be able to get in? Yes, I have them making the playoffs in 2023. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again next time.